Season 2, Episode 10.
Welcome to the Muslim Life Hackers podcast, the weekly podcast providing you with the knowledge, tools, and connections to help you get ahead in life. And now for your hosts, Mifra Maroof and Maheen Malik.
Assalamu alaikum, Muslim Life Hackers. Welcome to another episode from the Muslim Life Hackers podcast. My name is Mifra Maroof and I'll be your host for today. In this episode, we have on the show guest Saida Zaidi. Saida is a certified high-performance coach, a positive psychologist, student of life, traveler, and mum. She's also the founder of the Muslim Entrepreneurs Association and the creator of the Abundance Academy. Now, in this interview, she shares some great insights on positive psychology, high performance, and being intentional with our lives and making use of the blessings that we've been given. Now, you'll take away many great gems from this episode, as I have. The funny thing was, during this show, we got into some tips on how to work better. And one of the things Saida mentioned was to get more sleep, because most of us are sleep deprived, and that there was this research mentioning that those who are sleep deprived displayed similar symptoms to a person who was slightly drunk. Now, I found this funny because just that morning when we were recording that interview, I slept at around 2 a.m. because it was Saturday night and, you know, you have family over and everything. So the interview was scheduled 5 a.m. the next morning. So that's 3 hours of sleep. And I'm hoping that I'm one of the exceptions to this research and that I don't display any symptoms and, you know, still come across completely sane. But regardless, the interview was fantastic and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Assalamu alaikum, Muslim Life Hackers. I'm here on a call with our guest for today, Sister Saida Zaidi. Assalamu alaikum, Saida. How are you today?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I'm very, very happy to be speaking to you guys.
Alhamdulillah. Well, we are honored to have you on the show and thank you so much for joining us. I'm quite excited for this interview and the questions that we have lined up. But for our audience who are not aware of your work, can you tell us about yourself and the work you do?
That's quite a complex question, actually. I started out working as an architect and kind of got to the top of my game. My ambition used to be to become the first hijabi chief exec in local government in the UK. And anyway, I got quite close to that. And then I just realized one day that actually that was not the life that I really wanted. And even though I'd been quite driven in my career, and I could have done it, you know, my life was going to take a different track. So that's when I started to coach others to get to the top of their game within their careers and get into positive psychology, which was just digging a little bit deeper in terms of well-being and happiness. And the work that I do now is very much orientated around helping individuals literally to get to the top of their game in whatever it is that they're doing. And then also I run courses online and teach kind of people in larger groups how they can learn more about things like the Islamic perspective on positive psychology, personal development, general growth, and just how they can kind of, I like to call it squeeze more out of life, you know?
Oh, that's awesome.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good to hear that how you mentioned about you actually had an aim to become a chief executive, but then like priorities changed and you're actually true to that, which is actually like a very brave step to take, especially since, like, you know, when sometimes when we're set on a goal, like we're like it's as though we get married to it or something. Like there's none of that flexibility if things do change in life. So
I know, and the thing is, sometimes it can restrict you and it holds you back. And I'm writing something at the moment, and the interesting thing is, one of the titles I've chosen is $160,000 a year to buy my life. You know, because that's literally how I felt, because that's how much money I was earning. And you know, it's crazy. Yeah. It's just an obscene amount of money. You know, but literally I felt like I had sold my soul. And, you know, alhamdulillah, I was still able to practice as a Muslim and there was no issues with me wearing hijab and fasting and praying and all of those other things. But it just didn't feel right, you know, it just didn't feel like it was the life that I wanted to lead. And was all of that money and the lifestyle that I had actually worth the sacrifices that I was making? And sometimes when we're after progression in our careers and we want to do great in our jobs, we don't actually realize the things that we're sacrificing.
That's so true. That's so true. So you actually do work on areas such as like entrepreneurship, work-faith balance. Then there's the positive psychology, high performance, and abundance. Now that was a handful. Now the first two are quite clear and straightforward. But I'm actually interested to know more about the last three on that list. So that's the positive psychology, high performance, and abundance. Can you explain to us what these are all about?
Absolutely. Positive psychology is awesome. It's essentially the science of happiness, and it's to do with how you can increase your well-being. And subhanAllah, I'm doing a PhD at the moment, and I'm actually studying the Islamic perspective on positive psychology. And for me, the two things, they literally hand in hand, because if we look at it, even the 5 pillars of Islam, I like to think of those as interventions. And so, for example, when we pray 5 times a day and we are in that conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, actually it's a very positive intervention within our life, because it does so many things. It reconnects us with our spirituality. It kind of gives us an opportunity to be grateful. It gives us hope. When we're stuck in life and we're kind of thinking, why is this stuff happening to me? Then you have hope, because you can ask Allah for help. And so really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work out a way for how we can look at Islam as a very, very kind of positive faith, and actually take out things from it that are going to make us happy, rather than become ritualized. And there's a lot of negativity around the world at the moment for Muslims, and I just want to do a little bit to transform that, because Muslims, we are not miserable beings. We can have a laugh, but at the same time we need to work out what we need for our own well-being, and how we can actually increase our levels of joy and satisfaction with life. I mean, subhanAllah, many of the Sahaba, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself would say that, contentment is the key to life, yet we hunger for all of these things and we're not content. And I think that there's a lot that can be done to turn some of that around. So I'm very interested in how, as a Muslim, we can bring some of these interventions into our lives and just be happy or happier on a daily basis, rather than say, my life is miserable, but this is what Allah has chosen for me, because I don't buy that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people, like, when you actually come across that, like, that really negative belief that people are able to kind of live life like that, knowing, okay, this is how I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. And it's pretty amazing that, like, life can progress like that. But I mean, like you said, definitely, I mean, we're not miserable people, and there's so much we can learn about, like, being happy.
Yeah, and we all make our choices, and of course, look, we know that everything is in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I really think that more of us should live our life by, tie your camel, leave the rest to Allah. And if you don't do the tying your camel bit, then seriously, what is it that you're leaving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because it's not going to be very much, And I think that we should just spend more time trying to work out what it is that's actually going to make us happier and take steps towards that. And so if we look back at what we were discussing before about me wanting to be the first hijabi chief exec, I was driven towards that goal, and I asked Allah for help, and he put so much barakah in my career. It was phenomenal. But you can do that with any goal that you have. It's literally just about articulating what it is, working it out, and then seeking the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think in some ways, actually, that kind of quite nicely takes me on to the work that I'm doing in terms of abundance, because, I when I was growing up, we had no money. There was one week I remember where it was a Thursday and we had run out of food and we had no money, and we basically had to wait until the next Tuesday, right? And so when you grow up living like that, then you understand what the value of money is. But then when you go to the other extreme, when you're on kind of obscene amounts of money and you actually don't understand what those zeros mean in your bank balance, it's a complete contradiction. And so and then you look at the situation that I'm living in now, because I am living in Egypt and we're all studying Arabic and Quran and other scholarly subjects, and it's wonderful. But you look at the quality of life and the standard of living, and it's very, very different from living in an urban situation.
Yeah.
And this is where I think the barakah comes from, because nobody needs a particular lifestyle that they are desperate for in order to feel abundance. And abundance is very much a state of mind, and it's literally about saying, okay, this is the lifestyle that I want to lead, and this is how I'm going to do it. Because honestly, if you ask me, I would say that I live the life of a millionaire right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I am a millionaire,
Yeah.
but I choose when to get up. I choose how to spend my time. If we wanted to take off 3 months and go traveling, we could do it because of some of the things that we've set up. And it doesn't need to be extravagant. So and I suppose what I'm trying to do in the work that I'm doing with entrepreneurship, abundance, positive psychology is basically say to people, what is the other perspective on life? If you really could live the life that you wanted to, what would you do? And how can you then go about making that happen? Because we don't need to be stuck to the city that we were born in and grew up in and our desk job and all of that other stuff. You can make crazy choices like I did,
Yeah. Wow, that's so true. Like changing perspectives and being true to kind of what the kind of life you want. It actually reminds me of how Tim Ferriss actually calls it the new rich. You don't have to particularly be a billionaire, but design your life in a way that it works on your terms.
Absolutely. And do you know what's really nice about this is that it gives you the opportunity to really genuinely put Islam at the heart of your life, because I couldn't be doing some of the things that I'm doing now. When I was working in a desk job, it's very hard for you to have proper khushu in your salah, and it's something that we will always strive for. But when you're on a kind of a deadline and you only have a few minutes and you're worrying about who's looking at you and, did you make your wudu properly because you haven't got the facilities in your workplace and all of these other things, how can you actually really focus on it? But if you take yourself away from it and get some control, and I think, Allah has given us so many gifts today, with the internet, with technology and all of this stuff, that it's like He's facilitated it for us to be able to take control of our lives so that we can actually be Muslims first, and then kind of everything else just cascades off that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like part of being grateful is to make use of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Definitely. So, just moving on the conversation a bit, I actually noticed you released a series recently about positive psychology messages from the 40 hadith of Imam an-Nawawi. Now, this is something that this is the first time I came across something like this, so I was excited to sign up myself. But I'm quite curious to know, like, what do you hope to achieve with this project, and what has been your most insightful takeaway from all this?
I did a course with Sheikh Muhammad Akram Nadwi in London a couple of years ago on the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, and it just blew me away, because I remember sitting in that course thinking every single thing that we're learning has a positive psychology perspective on it. And we take from things what we want to, yet these hadith can, if you look at them from a slightly different angle, the messages that are in there can actually improve your well-being. And so, there's the message in there about Islam, Ihsan, and Iman, Islam, Ihsan.
Yep.
And what I love about that is that this is a hadith that many people are familiar with.
Yeah.
But sometimes we forget that the message of excellence is also one about improving ourselves. And when we make the decision to improve ourselves, we are actually making ourselves happier. And sometimes it's literally just about articulating that to somebody and saying, just look at these things from a slightly different perspective. That doesn't take away from all of the kind of hadith studies and the extensive knowledge and books that are out there that are looking at the hadith from a scholarly perspective, because that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, many people are already familiar with these. Let's just look at what we can take out of that to make us happier. Even the wish for your brother what you would wish for yourself. It's something that so many of us struggle to do, but there is a serious positive psychology message in there, in that, when you actually wish something positive for somebody else, the abundance, the joy, the happiness that comes back your way is priceless.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think we've forgotten some of that stuff. And so what I'm trying to do really with this series is just give it kind of like a different perspective. And also I wanted to do it in email because I know the hustle and bustle of life. Sometimes I'm constantly saving videos and saying I'll watch them later, or audios, and I just don't do it. Right. But if it's an email and it takes me 5 minutes to read or a couple of minutes, I'm going to read the thing and then I've got the takeaway and I can move on. And that's really what I'm trying to do with this series, inshallah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I really like that point you made about the one about loving for your brother what you love for yourself, and that message of positive psychology and abundance. It actually reminds me of what I'm seeing with like some of the ways that how some successful business people actually go about with their business. And one of the things that I notice they would say is like, have that abundance mindset. Just because they're doing the same thing as you are, it doesn't mean that there's going to be like any less of a demand kind of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that there is a time that I've read that the scholars have said, and I'm not sure how authentic this is a hadith or not. But for me, it's a wonderful idea, even if it's not an authentic hadith, that a time will come where people are so wealthy that there will be nowhere for us to give charity, right? Yeah. Now, if that is the case, then why don't we actually approach our lives like that and think, well, how wealthy could we become? And I don't just mean in a monetary kind of way, but how wealthy can we actually be in terms of time, productivity, our family, our faith, all of this other stuff? And how can we then share that with other people? Because you will get barakah, and also, I suppose the other thing is we are the sum of the people that we surround ourselves with. So if you surround yourself with amazing people, you're going to just lift yourself and become even more amazing. But if I look at the situation in the UK, many people are generationally unemployed or generationally uneducated because that's who they've surrounded themselves with. But you just need to take one person out of that situation and everything changes.
That's so true. So I just want to shift gears a bit here and move on to the topic of confidence. Now, you talk about the importance of being confident in yourself so that you can bring more to the things that you do. And you know what? This makes total sense. But an issue that was brought up by one of our listeners on this whole issue of confidence was that finding the balance between confident and not being proud and arrogant. So I'm really interested to know what your thoughts on this. I mean, is this just a misunderstanding of confidence, or is there some truth to this in that you can get really carried away in the pursuit of being confident?
I think there's a very fine line between being really, really confident and being kind of arrogant and full of yourself. But I think that especially for Muslim women, and I think increasingly so for Muslim men now because of the way that the world is moving, we don't have confidence anymore and we don't believe in ourselves. And what happens is that as soon as you start to lack confidence, you start to develop a victim mentality, and that then means that you don't actually do anything. And so I think you have to have a degree of confidence, because when you believe that you can do something, actually it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you kind of take your physicality and your psychology and move yourself towards doing that thing. Now, if you kind of, I'm studying Arabic And if I just kind of went into my class really full of myself and said, oh, yeah, I've already studied this stuff. I don't need to learn it again. And I didn't revise for my exams and I didn't pay attention in class. Would I pass those exams? No. And that's the difference, And do we want to be with people who are like that and kind of full of themselves? Not really. And so I think actually for people who are really, really confident, the key thing to do is to surround yourself with people that keep your feet on the ground. And so for me, we all have up and downs. There'll be days
definitely.
where I feel great. There'll be days where I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I even studying? Why am I doing this stuff? But then I have my husband and my kids, and they're the people that keep my feet on the ground. They're the ones that, at the end of a talk that I've done, who will remind me who I am. And it's wonderful because I think it's really, really important for us, especially when you become successful, to make sure that you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your success, because your success does not come from you. It becomes because He's given it to you.
Yeah.
And I think so that's one message in terms of surrounding yourself with good people. And if you don't feel confident, then I think my formula for what I do when I'm starting to feel a little bit down and I'm unsure of myself is I ask Allah for help, and I'll make dhikr. And there's some regular dhikrs that I do, because there'll be the time when you wake up in the middle of the night and you doubt everything that has ever existed in your life, right?
Yeah.
And that's the time to make dhikr and to ask Allah for help, because even if you don't know what you're doing, even if you feel unconfident, then ask Allah to bring that confidence into your life, because He is the one that can give you absolutely everything. And don't, I suppose my key advice in confidence and in abundance and all of these things is just don't restrict yourself, because Allah's abundance is massive. We can't even fathom what it is. So whatever it is that you want to ask for, make your goals clear and then ask Allah for help, because He will facilitate it for you, inshallah.
Yeah, that's so true. So just going back on that point you made about how what you normally do is like increasing the amount of dhikr that you do. So what do you actually mean by that? Do you mean that you'd read more Quran or?
Oh, there's a kind of a little page that I have of dhikr, and I just read it again and again and again, and I'm happy to share it with you.
Okay, so fantastic.
And it's the one that I do, and it works for me, because then I wake up and I feel hope again. Because there have been times when we've been here and I've questioned why we've moved our whole family to Egypt. And it's at times like that you just kind of think, of course, it's all Allah's will, but what is it that I'm supposed to learn through this? And I don't know, I sometimes get a bit down and you miss your family and all of these other things, and, the nice cup of coffee that you could get in the morning, And I think, okay, I have to get myself out of this, and it's the dhikr that makes me do that. So I'm happy to share that with you, inshallah.
Okay, awesome. So for our audience that are listening to this, we'll include that in the show notes, inshallah. Okay, now coming on to high performance and actually working to the best of our abilities, I know that there's a lot to say on this topic, and the time we have here won't suffice, but I'm interested to know, like, what are your best tips when it comes to like high performance working? Because I know that you're doing a lot, and writing your book, and then there's the Arabic, and that's just a few of what you're doing. So how can you keep kind of working with excellence and really making your time count?
So that's an interesting one, because my answer to how you can be a high performer would be slightly different to how you can be excellent and make your time count.
Okay.
And I'll answer the second one first.
Okay, cool.
Because I think that when I wake up in the day and I have a lot to do, I just have to remember that inshallah on Judgment Day, when I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He's asking me questions about my life, I don't want to just be average, I don't want to just present Him with average stuff. And that means that I have to do things that make myself uncomfortable. And, 5 years ago, I did not even know how to spell the word blog, let alone what it was, right? So
Wow.
you take yourself out of the comfort zone and do things that are difficult for you and challenge you, because at the end of the day, when we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to have tons and tons of good deeds, so many good deeds that we cannot even imagine, because it could just be one of those that tips us over into Jannah. Right. And so that for me is the whole purpose about being excellent and striving to do the things to the best of your ability, because you don't know how Allah is going to kind of judge the deeds that you're doing. But if you try to do the best that you can in everything that you do, inshallah, He will accept it with the intention that you're kind of, that you're feeling in your heart and in your mind.
Yeah.
The next thing in terms of high performance, I would say, and it kind of links to the first thing, but I would say have absolute clarity over what you want to do, because you can be excellent at anything, right? I mean, subhanAllah, there are people out there that are excellent at stuff that is just a complete waste of time. And there's a story from early Islam where this guy went to a king and said, look, I'll show you a trick. And he basically put a piece of thread through 10 needles, right? And the king said to him, so give him 40 dinars and give him 40 lashes. And so the 40 dinars was the big thing that he did. And the 40 lashes was because he wasted his time, right? And so we really have to spend our time doing things that are constructive, that are going to actually help us to be better Muslims, but also contribute to wider society. So be absolutely clear on what you want to do and then be the best at it, inshallah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's like the first thing is to be clear on the intention and the why behind what you're doing. So that fuels the excellence in what you're doing. And then the second is to have absolute clarity with what you need to get done.
Yeah. And then there's other things, which are to do with your psychology and your mindset and your physiology as well. Because, if you're not drinking enough water, how is your brain going to work? How is your body actually going to function properly? We are all sleep deprived at the moment. If we don't sleep properly, it's like we're walking around slightly drunk. There's research that's been done that actually says that if you don't sleep effectively, you display the symptoms of somebody who's had some alcohol.
Oh, no.
So this is what we're doing to ourselves because we think that we're being so efficient going to bed with our phones. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, the phones.
We need to change some of that because in order to be high performers, we need to actually take care of ourselves. And it's not rocket science. It just requires a little bit of tweaking to the lives that we're living.
That's so true. Because at the end of the day, it is our bodies that is actually carrying us to be able to do all these things. And if we don't take care of that, then it's going to be hard to get things done, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
On that point that you mentioned on being uncomfortable and like getting out of your comfort zone in order to do things, it reminded me of this podcast that I heard the other day. And that person, he was saying that whenever he feels uncomfortable and when he's trying something new, he tells himself that, hey, I'm doing something right because if I feel this, that means I'm growing. So I thought that was a quite interesting perspective to look at it.
I love it. I love it because, it's like, and actually, this, I've got some names of some books that I'm going to share, inshallah, later on. And one of those is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And I absolutely love that book because the message it gives is about, anyone can learn to do anything if they apply themselves to it. But you do have to step out of your comfort zone and it will hurt, and it will hurt you physically and it will hurt you emotionally and spiritually and everything. But you do it, you become an expert in it, and it could be your life's work.
That's so true. And even when we have a look at, say, how things work in nature and everything, like there is that kind of resistance it has to go through before it comes to another stage. Like for example, when children grow, I mean, they start crying because they're growing, and or like when they're like growing the new tooth or something kind of thing. So there's always going to be pain in the process of growth, but
Well, I tell you, it's a very nice thing that you've raised, because I remember once when my son was trying to memorize some lines from the Quran, and he just started to cry.
oh no.
And I was like, "What's wrong, Musa?" And he said, "It's so hard." And but he carried on and he carried on, and I was like, "This is the first time I've seen this kid really, really want to do his hifz, you know." And it blew me away, because it made me realize that it's not me that wants it for him. He wants it for him.
That internal, having the internal drive.
Absolutely. And I think that that's really, really important, because
definitely.
unless you want to do something for yourself and you're willing to suffer and go through that pain, you'll just give up. It is so easy to give up at stuff these days.
Yeah.
But we need to just remain committed and just go for it, inshallah. And imagine the success, when he completes his hifz, for me, that's bigger than a PhD. When he stands in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he starts reciting, and they say that your place in Jannah will be determined by when you stop reciting. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking about like the excuses and stuff, I remember reading this thing about how humans are irrational beings, and like we would do something and then would kind of like justify that behavior, as opposed to like being the other way around. So it's very easy to get out of doing something because it's easy to have an excuse and say, hey, maybe this kind of lifestyle isn't for me, or I'm not that kind of person. And
No, absolutely, I agree with you, because I have to. It just reminds me of the kind of strange way that I'm living now, because I'm living in the middle of Cairo. It's a bigger city than London in some respects.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the biggest city in Africa, right?
Oh, wow.
And the hustle and the bustle and the pollution and all of that. My life is very different, but would I change it? Never, because of all of the other stuff that we're learning.
Yeah, and also people have this kind of you can say this wrong idea about, like, when they see someone successful, they think that, oh look, it's all easy, it comes easy to them, and they probably don't experience like times of fear, and like they don't experience like all these resistance and stuff. I mean, what do you say to that, especially since you are someone who have accomplished a lot of things?
Alhamdulillah. So success comes when you work hard, like Edison, who invented the light bulb.
Yeah.
He had 10,000 failures. He didn't succeed at it first time round. Yes, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with a lot of wonderful things, but I struggled at school, and I worked so hard when I was at university. My friends were going off on holiday. I was working every single holiday just so that I could, pay my way. So and now people see that, alhamdulillah, I've achieved things and stuff. But when did I last have a break? I can't imagine. I can't even think about when I last had a proper break, and that's great for me because I want to continue learning. I'm making the choices about how I'm spending my time, but I'm only able to do that because of the hard work that I put in for a good 30 years of my life.
So true. There's like most of the work happens behind the scenes, and people only see like that. Just that little bit. Yeah,
and I think that with the way that the world is these days, everybody wants everything instantly. Well, and look, okay, great example, because look at fast food. You get it straight away, but look how bad it is for you. Yet if you're going to make a healthy salad, and if you go to the effort of growing all the stuff yourself organically, it's hard work. But I bet you that salad will be the best salad you eat in your whole life, because of the time and the love and the care that you've put in.
Yeah.
And actually, it's just like raising children. We can get the technology to babysit our kids, or we can turn ourselves away from technology and spend time with our kids. And then the fruits of what we've sown will be so much better. Do you want your kid to turn around and swear at you, or do you want your kid to be turning around and reading Quran at you? That's a decision many of us have to make,
So now, since honestly, I'm really enjoying this interview and the insights that you're bringing. But, all good things have to come to an end. And, as we're nearing this interview, I just want to shift gears a bit and ask you some final questions. So first of all, what are some of your favorite books?
So I mentioned Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I have to say, yes, it's going to sound cliched and everything, but one of my favorite books is the Quran. And the more that the part of the reason why I wanted to learn Arabic is because I wanted to understand some of the nuances of the words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used and why he used them. And so the more I understand that, the more I fall in love with the Quran. So, and it's the best personal development book out there, my friends. I'm serious. So definitely. And then The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Awesome book, because sometimes what we do is we restrict ourselves to think little things because of the people that are around us. And what this book does is it just gets you to kind of 10x, 100x, 1000x your thinking, and it just opens up your perspective to what is possible in your life.
I think it's like the third or fourth time that I'm coming across Magic of Thinking Big. I think it's a sign that I need to go and get that book and start reading it. So have to throw my to-do list.
You must.
Awesome. So finally, I just want to ask you, where can our audience find you online to learn more about what you're doing and benefit from your work?
Okay. So people can go to my website, which is sayeda.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Sayeda Zaidi or at Working Muslim. And on the Sayeda.com, it's kind of got links to all of the other things that I'm doing as well. And you can follow me on Twitter, etc., at Working Muslim as well, inshallah.
Awesome. So for those listening, all this will be included in our show notes, which you can find on our website at muslimlifehackers.com. Sayedna, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Jazakallah khair, and I love your podcast, I have to say that. So I benefit from it so much as well. So inshallah someone will benefit from this one.
Thank you so much. Okay, so that concludes our episode with Sayeda Zaidi. You can find more about her work online on her website, and you can also connect with her on the social media platforms she's on, including Facebook and Twitter. You'll find links to that on our website in the show notes. Also, are you a part of the Muslim Lifehackers VIP list? Because if you're not, then you're missing out. Because you see, the VIP list is where you get access to content that's not published online, have a say in the topics and guests we bring on the show, and a whole lot more. So if you're not part of it, check it out by going to muslimlifehackers.com/VIP. Now we've reached the end of this episode, and if you're still sticking around to hear this, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time, tuning into the show. We really appreciate it, because you know what? Without you guys, there'll be no podcast. So thanks again. And until next time, aim high, take action, and be awesome. Ukwenza ngokuhle sisazi